necessary, we'll share it with the other group. For your information, basically this class will be a team teach with Dr. Chimazna. Okay, so before this, she would have been teaching other groups. However, group 2 tutup because of insufficient students. So hence this class will be shared with Dr. Chimazna. So my plan is basically the first 7 weeks will be taught by me, and the following 7 weeks taught by Dr. Mazna. But that depends. Let's see. Okay, in case there are topics that I think I would be able to deliver, then I'll deliver, and topics that she would be able to deliver, then she'll deliver. Okay, but that one is fine. Nothing much. Nothing would change that much. Okay, so in the last class, okay, so we did not have face to face as such, and I provided you with the recording. Did every one of you watch the recording? Did any one of you did not watch the recording? Pun takkan mengaku kan? Where did we stop in the recording? Which slide? So I believe I shared the recording of this.
For management level?
Mana?
Management level.
Management level sini. Sini.
Yes.
Yeah, betul. So I hope, because I think moving forward we would be doing as such, because it is basically it will be repetitive basically. Okay, so so that when I lecture in one class, the other class will have the same points, right? Because sometimes I would mention certain items or certain elements which might differ between different group if at different timing. So I think moving forward, I think this is one of the way. So, and you can actually look at it at your at the expense of your time. Okay, so cuma I need your commitment for you to go through the recording. If the recording is 2 hours, then you need to go through 2 hours. You might spend 1 hour, stop, and then 1 hour go through the recording, but I need you to go through the recording. Okay, so everyone agree to this?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so that if you have, but from the recording, any question do you have? From the other class, tak ada apa-apa. From you, any question that you need to ask from the notes? Okay, so I just run through so that we have an idea what you have gone through. So the recording was about introduction to management concept. Okay, so basically we have started with what is work in management. Simple lah, tak ada apa. So basically this is what is work, basically what is kerja tu apa. Okay, so it's a work that produce value to other people. If you are working but it does not produce value to other people, it is not worth the work lah maksudnya. So sometimes let's say kita for example okay, we say we are working, tapi masuk kerja at 10 o'clock, 10 to 10:30 pergi minum, and then we have minum, then the work tak equal to work lah. So, and that work does not equal to value to other people. So don't call it work, and basically at the end of the day you get the salary pun, the salary tu tak berkat. Okay, so work is where you work and it adds value, it gives value to other people, the people who is paying you. That one is very important. Basically it is how to say it represents whatever you buat juga. Okay, so in your manner you would say that you study to add value tak to you at the end of the day for your marks too. So you need to see when you study to, is it the quality time? Do you study and ensure that whatever you have studied, it goes to your mind, it goes to your brain, and it is knowledge, and it will add value to your CGPA or to your examination. If you mention study tapi it is not quality in nature, it is just maybe an expense of 2 hours, you cakap study but then you know doing something else, it doesn't add value, then it's not studying. Okay, so same goes as such. Because during this ODL is quite challenging. Okay, so I wouldn't be able to see you, okay, face to face. So I really hope that you are here studying when we have, because ODL we can't push through 2 hours. I think it's too long. So maybe we will have 1 hour break and then sambung sikit macam tu. So that will be the quality time. Okay, so that will be a time where you place yourself there and you can understand crystal clear what I'm trying to deliver. Sama lah. Okay, so basically you're here to study. All right, so management. So if you have looked through the recording, the functions of it is similar. Okay, so that one you need to know by heart. Okay, so management basically is planning, organizing, leading, controlling, and the staffing. Okay, so this one. And then the definition, I don't need you to memorize. I think I've mentioned in the last class, I don't need you to memorize. I just need you to understand what is management. So, and these are just the advantages and the functions. Okay, so there are many variations by different authors, but we will hold on to the top one. Okay, planning, organizing, leading, controlling, and also the one that call it pesky, staffing. Okay, so looks simple, looks not that important, but it plays a major role in determining the people that you're going to hire to. So it's good enough to actually can conduct the planning, organizing, and so on. Okay. Other than that, I think I did highlight on the people. Okay, so when we are managing, very important is through people. If you're a boss, you direct people to do the job, people are not doing the job accordingly, and you at the end of the day end up doing the job, then you are not managing. You're not managing well. Okay, so managing is about getting things done through people. And basically people here is very important because it would determine the success and failure of a project. Wrong people taken in, wrong way. Okay, so people with limited skill, limited knowledge, you might be able to train, but if your project is a very fast track project, I highly doubt you can train people in that short period of time. If your project is lengthy, yes, you are able to train and so on. But if your project is, is a very fast track project, to train, probably there would be like mentor-mentee scheme and so on. Okay, so, and this is a manager. Okay, so manager's job. And this is the thing I think I highlight as well. Okay, so there are two things that project managers need to ensure: the performance of the project and the satisfaction of the people. If he's only focused on the project, neglecting the satisfaction of the people, then probably he's not how to say, overall efficient and effective manager. Okay, so a manager should look into the satisfaction of the people juga. Okay, so rather than only on the project. Tapi if we are talking on the project, basically the strategy should be efficient and the strategy should be effective. Okay, and then satisfaction of the people. Okay. And then, all right, so this is what I meant by effective, efficient. Effective is in terms of how well your goal has been achieved, and efficient is how well you use your resources to achieve the goal. Okay. And in terms of quality of life, basically whatever required by us human being lah. Okay, so obviously as a human, we start, if we work, we want a fair pay. Okay, so that is the first aim, especially as a graduate engineer. I suppose the main aim of you when you get into the job market will be the pay dulu. And then once you have a good pay, okay, so you are already comfortable with the job, you will want more. Okay, so you might require safety, how well your job would is secured. Okay, so is it contractual? Is it yearly renew contract? So that might give you insecurity sikit, because let's say the contract ends and there are no subsequent job, you have to find another job. Dia tak secure lah. Annually you have to think of that. But if it's a permanent job, maybe, so then it will give you security. So once you have addressed the pay issue, lepas tu you think of other things, whether the job is secure ke tak, and then whether the job gives you this sense of belonging. Okay, so that you feel that when you go into a job, you feel like, okay, everyone is supporting each other rather than backstabbing and hating each other at the job. Okay, so you might come into a job or an office where it is quite toxic. Okay, so it wouldn't be bed of roses. Okay, so it wouldn't be, you would expect the job to be wonderful and everyone will be nice to you. That will be a bit of utopia lah. Okay, so I think you would need to have the expectation where people might support you, people might not like the way you work, and people would disagree with your idea, but those are part and parcel of working. Okay, so but sooner or later you get used to it, but I think initially it'll be quite difficult. But sooner or later you get used to it and you learn to survive basically. Okay, so the manager's challenges I did mention. A manager is accountable to the boss and is highly dependent on the subordinates. So you are like the middle person that you need to answer, you are answerable to your boss for the KPI, and your KPI is reliance on the subordinate. So the pressure, it will be high. Okay, so you are not the person doing the job, but you are the person who's going to bear the consequences if the job is not being done. Okay, so benda tu penting lah. So you are being paid high for a reason. So it's basically for the brain. Okay, so you need to think, you need to bear the pressure, you need to know how you can actually execute the job accountable to your boss. So it's not an easy task. So sometimes people will say that, okay, people being paid at a higher position, paid higher, tapi tak buat apa-apa. True, physically they might not be doing that job, okay, but mentally there are quite a lot happening in the brain. Okay, so these are the 4 concepts of management. So very important, you need to know by heart. Okay, so you need to plan. Once you have planned, you can organize it based on resources that you have. Okay, so once you have organized it, you need to lead. So there might be a leader for every job scope, for example. Okay, and also control. So control comes usually with monitoring. So once you lead, the thing is ongoing, then you might need to monitor. So whether the progress is on dot. Okay, so monitor and control when there are deviations. Okay, so you take action. And the small tiny one that people usually say is pesky is basically stuffing. So stuffing is done a lot by HR, but bear in mind that in construction, your stuffing comes along with or basically will be conducted together with project manager juga. So as a project manager, one of your job would be to acquire the engineers at your site or for your project, on your project too. So as a project manager, you are not only an engineer, but you are at the same time, you need to have the thoughts of the HR. Okay, even though to be honest, in your engineering syllabus, we did not study business or we did not study HR. The most point, I think most probably you might be taking ENT, to put entrepreneurship. So one of the things that being argued around is how good of a project manager would an engineer be? Okay, so because we did not take basic business pun, nothing much that we did touch on HR, human capacity development, tak ada. So how well or how good can a manager would an engineer be? Sebab basically as a project manager, after 10 years of managing a project, you might be acquired, you might be upgraded from an engineer to a project manager. So basically our experience determines how well a manager. So basically for engineers, we learn on the work, we learn on through the experience of managing project. So that is one thing that sometimes they did, you know, sometimes they highlight, okay, can an engineer become a project manager? Okay, so because management is a field by itself, besar, management field is huge. That's why they have degree in business management and so on. But I believe those are the things that you can learn. Okay, so on job or off job, but you'll be able to learn. So hence staffing is one of the thing which is not in engineering, but playing a part together with human resource too. Okay. So these are just the function of planning, okay, organizing, leading, controlling, okay, and the levels. And we did stop here. Okay, so we have the top management, middle management, first line managers. Okay, so any question? Okay, kalau tak ada tu, then we continue to the next. So I trust that everyone have gone through the recording. Okay. Alright, so for the next one, I just wonder if I display macam ni gerak tak? Let's see, okay. So for the next one is basically the management skill. Okay, so there are many skills required by management or by managers, but the most I would say significant or the most highlighted skills are basically the conceptual skill, the people skill, the technical skill. Okay, and these skills vary between the level of management. Okay, so we have top managers. Simply say we have top managers, we have non-manager. Okay, so you can see that at the lower level, okay, so you might acquire much on technical skill. You would require a lot of technical skill. You will require people, conceptual skill, but at a higher level, you will see that your technical skill requirement are less, but you rely a lot on conceptual skill. Okay, so when we talk about technical skill, it's basically the skills whether in using software, when is you are trying to design, so those are technical skills. Okay, so skills necessary to accomplish the specific kind of work. So as a fresh graduate, okay, so as a graduate engineer, I would believe you would be having a lot of technical skill. So you are fresh born from coming up with design classes, okay. So you might have used certain softwares to sharpen up your skill in designing and so on. So your technical skill should be high as a graduate engineer. People skill, you did not navigate much with people, okay, so you have not come across dealing with site engineers, site supervisors, site agent. So your people skill should be just around your colleagues, okay, and conceptual skill might be there but not that sharpened, okay. But as you go up the ladder, okay, so you will see that you need to have the conceptual skill very much sharpened. Okay, so your people skill is good and you would require less on the technical skill. So that's why you could see that there are some companies, okay, so construction companies, the CEO are basically not engineers. They are basically from economic background, or they are from what do you call business background and so on. So not necessarily holding the position of CEO should be an engineer, because it is not necessary for them to know the tiny bits and bits of the technical skill. Okay, but however, the engineers usually they hire based on the technical skill. Okay, so you could see that at the lower level they are engineers. So hence, for you to climb up the ladder as an engineer, from having technical skill, moving upwards, you need to have your conceptual skill, your people skill polished. So, but don't forget the technical skill lah. Okay, so it is still there, but you might not use it that much. Okay, so people skill is basically about communicating, understanding, motivating individuals and so on. So you can see that when we mention communicate, is two-way communication. Okay, so your message should be delivered and properly, and should be received in proper manner by the people accepting it. Sometimes we speak as we want, tapi orang sebelah sana tak faham. Okay, so the people at the other side could not understand what we are trying to say. They cloudy lah. Okay, so that is why when we are communicating, ensure that who are we communicating to. Okay, so sometimes when we communicate, we assume people understand what we are trying to say. So sometimes you can get your colleagues probably telling you story, tak ada head, tak ada tail, there is a body. Okay, so because they assume you might be able to understand the story, but not necessarily so. So you need to be able to see your recipient who's gonna receive the communication, to receive the information. Are they able to understand whatever you're trying to mention? So the level of education plays a role, the level of language as well. Okay, so those are the things. So I think sometimes that is one of the thing that the probably the limitation of graduate. Okay, the communication. So we do receive quite a lot on from from employers that the graduates are like in communicating and so on. So I think communication is just about practicing. You just need to practice. So particularly if we are talking about English, okay, why if you go on to into the working life, besides government, if you are working in private, a lot of it will be in English. Okay, so meetings might be conducted in English. So those are one of the areas that you might be able to enhance now. Okay, so I think because it's quite difficult, I could not see you face to face, so it's quite difficult for me to actually see how the graduates are now. I told you that I thought undergrad was around 2018 the last. So it's interesting to see after 3 years ada tak beza. So itulah a bit wasted on that. If it's face to face, then I could actually see your body language, the way you communicate, so that will be much better for me to, you know, at least assist in such a way. But anyhow, communicating is about two-way communication, is to ensure that your information passed to your recipient and it is received, and in correspondence to that you will be able to receive the communication or information from them as well. So two-way communication. Okay, and then besides that, people skill not only about communication, it's about how you can actually motivate people to work. Okay, so if you communicate tapi communicate in ill-mannered, okay, so without proper, how to say, without addressing people properly, then it does not turn out well as well. Okay, so your communication, even though full of information, it should be I would say, use the word, it should be mannered. Okay, so because when we are speaking, especially the people elder than us, I think manner tu sangat penting lah for me. Okay, I think for all of us. Okay, so mannered and also humble. So quite a lot actually when we talk about communication, quite a lot. Okay, especially when you're going for an interview. How do you communicate in such a way that it is convincing, it is confident, but not cocky? So there is a fine line. Sometimes people can tend to be too confident, and when it's too confident, it looks too cocky. Okay, so there is a certain level of, you have to have the confidence, but at the same time you portray to be humble. Macam tu lah. But you learn once you go on, you know. All right, so the next skill is basically about conceptual skill. Okay, so conceptual is basically, how should I put it, conceptual is where you can integrate different factors together. You can make a decision based on an informed, it is an informed decision. So you can join different factors together and hence come up with an decision which is well informed. Okay, so the ability to think, to integrate, to give directions so that the objective are achieved. Okay, not easy to have this conceptual skill because you will need a very strong critical thinking. So you would think from every angle. If I'm going to have decision A, who will be impacted? What are the possible consequences? And if I have what they call solution B or decision B, what are the impact and who will be involved. So basically you have everything mapped up in your mind that okay, there are several scenarios here and how those scenarios would play out, and you can basically more or less predict how the decision or how the, I wouldn't say how the future will be, how expected the future would be, expected the expected result from the decision that you make. So conceptual skill is something like that. So basically conceptual skill is where someone who might actually anticipate what could happen. Okay, so more or less something like that. Okay, is the slide moving?
No.
Tak boleh play lah. Okay. Okay, so managers by area. Okay, so there are many types of managers, but these are just several that might be common. Okay, so marketing manager, financial manager, operations manager. So you see the marketing manager is a lot. If it's in real estate, if it's in our basically our industry, it will be a lot at the developer. Okay, so you might be the sales engineer, for example. Okay, so and you're governed by marketing manager, and financial managers are basically on financial resources. As an engineer, I don't think we will deal a lot on financial. It will be the finance department. Okay, operations manager concerned with the operational, especially IT banyak. Okay, HR manager, so this is important, and this would be the first, basically the first entity, okay, to be in existence, because they conduct the hiring, they conduct the salary payment and so on. Okay, so without HR, you can run that, you cannot recruit. Okay, so it will be quite tight on recruiting and basically sustaining the human capital in an organization. Okay, so you should have one of the earliest managers will be the HR manager. Okay, administrative, basically the ones to do with anything paper, for example, anything ingoing, outgoing, drawings, documentation, so admin stuff lah. Okay, and others. Okay, and key managerial role. Okay, so basically as a manager, there are several or basically 3 roles that you mainly play. Okay, so as an informer, and you need to play as an interpersonal role and also decisional role. Okay, so as an informer, okay, informational role, so you need to monitor the information, you need to disseminate the information, and you need to be the spokesperson of a project or of an organization. Okay, so that is one of the key important role a manager should be. Other than that, when we're talking about interpersonal role, so basically an manager would be the figurehead, leader, liaison. Okay, so hence when we are looking at a leader, it should be someone that we look high upon. Okay, so they should have this charisma or characteristic which would, you know, get, probably you can say, get followers. Okay, so you should have a proper or a very, you have the kind of persona as a leader. Okay, interpersonal. And decisional, basically if you're a leader, the role that you need to play, one of it will be making decision. So that's why a conceptual, the higher you go, the conceptual skill is important, so that you make a decision which would result in a very informed decision, minimal damage. If you make the wrong decision, your damage might be higher than you have expected. So that's why it's very important to have this conceptual skill earlier that I mentioned, so that the decision should be wise, taking into account the many risk factors and so on. Okay, so entrepreneur, disturbance handler, resource allocator, and negotiator. So among all of these, I think making the decision will be the most challenging one as a leader. Okay, for me personally, because I think making a decision, you might favor A, you might not favor B, and that result in B not happy. So especially in handling people, so it's not an easy task actually. So, and basically the higher you go, the more you will be hated by more. Okay, so normally it works that way. So it's quite difficult for you to sustain this harmonious, not easy, because there are decisions you make that might affect certain people, certain entity, and so on. Okay, but I think if the decision is a well-informed decision, taking into account risk, taking into account all the factors without being biased, I think that decision is well worthy lah. Okay. And characteristics of management. This is just generally what we mean by management. Okay, so there are varieties. Management are fragmented. Okay, brevity, large volume of work. Okay, so it's just to say that it's not easy to being a manager. Okay, so fundamental management skills. So these are this. So this is what I've mentioned just now. Okay, so technical skill, interpersonal skill, conceptual skill, and other than that, in addition to that, diagnostic, okay, so ability to visualize appropriate response, okay, so communication skill, decision making skill. So these are the skills that actually could be supported with certain tools as well. Okay, and time management skill, okay, and so on. Okay, so just to end the chapter, can we just have like a small tiny chapter checkout here? Okay, so let's see for the first question. Okay, so for most organizations, top management consists of which one? A, any manager above the level of foreman. B, the chief executive officer, the president and his vice president. C, the chief executive officer only. And D, the chief executive officer and the president only. Which one? A, B, C, or D? Tak ada jawapan ke? Which one?
B.
Tiga?
B.
Okay. Okay, so you should be able to get your answer. Here, let's see. Top manager. Okay, CEO, corporate or head, vice president, and so on. Okay, so it should be B lah. Okay, so the second question, the management functions are A, planning, organizing, staffing, leading, controlling. B, organizing, selling, accounting, leading, controlling. C, planning, accounting, leading, controlling, organizing. And D, planning, organizing, selling, leading, controlling. Which one?
A.
Straightforward.
A.
Okay, so the function will be planning, organizing, staffing, leading, controlling. All right, A. Number 3, the categories of management roles are A, figurehead, leader, license. B, monitor, disseminator, spokesperson. C, interpersonal, decisioner, entrepreneur. And D, interpersonal, informational, decisioner. Which one? A, B, C, D.
D.
D. D. Okay, so should be able to get the answer as D. Okay, so the role of a management ialah one, as an informer. Okay, so the information, the chain of information, the line of information, the type of information, so those should be correct information. Interpersonal, because you act as the role model. Okay, so interpersonal. And decisional, because your role is to make the right decision. Okay, so the role basically D. Okay, interpersonal, informational, and decisional. Okay, number 4, the skills that all managers need are A, planning, organizing, controlling. B, conceptual, technical, human. C, effectiveness, efficiency, planning. And D, interpersonal, decisional, informational. A, B, C, D.
B.
B. Okay, so the skills that all managers need are B. So you should have conceptual skill at the higher level. Okay, and then followed by human skill, and then the last is technical skill. Okay, so at the lower level, your technical skill is the highest. Climbing up the ladder, you would need the human, and climbing highest, you will need conceptual the most. Okay, all right. Okay, yang ni tak ada apa. Alright, so let's move on to the next section. Do you need a break? 5 minutes break ke?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's have a 5 minutes break before we continue. So please come back at lebih kurang dalam 8:58 lebih kurang. More or less 8:58. Okay, so just have a short break. Okay guys, semua dah ada? All back?
Yes.
Alright, okay, let's continue sikit lagi. I think we might be able to complete this topic today kot. Let's see kita ada 23 slide je. Okay, we should be able to complete this topic today. Okay, so this one will be the second part of the first chapter, okay, which is introduction to management. And oh yeah, tak boleh play. Okay, so you should be able to describe the origin of management theories and describe current management theories. Okay, so why do we need to look into theories of those days? Because we are still using it. Okay, so believe it or not, the theory has been in existence since Industry 1.0, but we are still using those theories. So hence, we need to know the origin and how it actually evolved throughout the years. Okay, so the most common, or basically the theory that we started off ialah the classical theory. Okay, so the classical theory could be what do you call, recognized or identified into two. Okay, so the first is scientific management. So if you can still recall, in the first notes hari tu, we did see Taylor kan. Okay, so that will be his last name. Okay, so for Frederick Winslow Taylor. Okay, so scientific management theory, and then followed by administrative management. Okay, so by Henry Fayol. And the next the following theory is basically related to human. Okay, so human relation theory, whereby we can find the Horton effect theory, okay, by Elton Mayer, and also theory XY by Douglas McGregor. Okay, so we'll touch on this a bit, and then basically we'll go on it in detail. Okay, so the first theory is basically the scientific theory. Why it is called scientific theory is because it is based on research. Okay, so whereby this theories find they research several options of optimizing the way of doing certain things. So they research, okay, kaedah A, kaedah B, kaedah C, kaedah D. Okay, so a couple of methods to see the most optimized way of doing certain things. So at this moment, they did experiment on bricklaying. So the most optimum way and the most ergonomic way of bricklaying. Okay, so they will do that research, and once they identify it, so basically they would measure it using time. Okay, so how long will it take if we use this method? How long will it take if we use the other method? Okay, so there are research being done scientifically with time measurement, and finally, if once they identify that optimized time, they will require the workers to just follow. Okay, so the job of the workers is to replicate the optimized method too. Okay, so that is this theory about. So Frederick Winslow Taylor, okay, so you can see the timeline around Industrial Revolution 1.0. Okay, so they need works to be done fast and in an effective manner. Okay, so masa ni Industry 1.0, everything is mobilizing fast and so on. Okay, so prior to this is basically feudal system where people are more laid back. Okay, so it is based on agriculture, and the mobilization is less. Okay, so but moving forward with locomotive, then things are getting at a faster speed. Okay, so higher speed and so on. Okay, so he's industrial engineer. Okay, so he started off the scientific management in business. Okay, so it's a scientific method to the management of workers which could improve productivity. Okay, so he assumed that working systems are generally inefficient because no one had bothered to make them efficient. Okay, so initially, of course, no one really thought of being productive as such because there is no necessity to move at that speed. Okay, but given that things are moving fast, at a point there is a requirement to improve productivity. Okay, and he also assumed that workers were naturally inclined to be lazy and inefficient, so that's why he had this theory that actually makes sure that okay, we have thought of a very optimized method to conduct a certain way. The workers are just required to do exactly, replicate the way it is being done. Okay, so hence it will actually eliminate, because sometimes we as human, um, once the how to say, method is vague and we are not given instruction in a proper manner, is a very cloudy, vague instruction, we tend to not have direction. Okay, but once we are being told you need to do this, so it makes us more informed and we know what we need to do. One, two, three, four. So that's why understanding the process and to know what we are trying to accomplish is very important. So hence this is one of the idea of him, that rather than, you know, the workers on their own, so give them the task exactly, and the task has been a certain its effectiveness, something like that. Okay, so hence this system is basically is a thought through by researcher, so that an effective method could be assumed. Okay, right, so he developed time and motion study. So actually we are still using this time and motion study now. Okay, especially organizations or organizations which aims to understand their work process and to reduce their work process. So the time and motion study, we are still actually doing it, and you can find it in journals by even construction management journals, where we measure. Okay, so if this is the way of doing things, how long will it take? So in fact, once we have conducted this, we should be able to come up with a database of, okay, the concreting of how many meters square of how many meters square of slab would require how long. Okay, so time and motion study. So basically it's an business efficiency technique. Okay, so later it is refined by his students. Okay, so Frank and Lillian Gilbert. The idea is to reduce the number of motion in performing a task. Okay, so to ensure that it could increase productivity. So obviously the less motion you are doing, the less time it will require for you to complete a task. So it will increase productivity. And for this theory, the best known experiment is bricklaying, and workers should cooperate with management. So you can imagine at this point of time, there are no trade union. So meaning to say that if there are workers who are being ill-treated, there will not be any trade union here. So they are like basically a trade, I, maybe not slave, but they just need to, you know, listen. Okay, so they are basically like robot. You just program them. In this sense, you just direct them to do a certain task and so on. Okay, so best results will come from the partnership between a trained, qualified management and a cooperative and innovative workforce. Okay, so develop 4 principles of scientific management, whereby he developed a science for every job. Okay, so when we are talking about science, it's about research, it's about investigating. Okay, select workers with right ability. Okay, and because you have identified the method, you should know there are workers with certain abilities. Maybe certain method requires right-handed rather than left-handed, so because the movement might be more awkward for left-handed, for example. So there are certain workers selected based on their abilities or based on their skill, and that is what they need to do. Okay, provide proper training and incentive, and they support workers in completing the tasks. Okay, so that's on Frederick Winslow Taylor. Okay, and around more or less the same time, we have the next theories, which is Henry Fayol. Okay, so his theory is a little bit bigger. Wait, So his theory is a little bit at a bigger scope than Taylor. Okay, why? Because Fayol thinks rather than looking at the scope, rather than looking at a smaller minuscule skill of method of conducting certain job. He is looking at the administration itself. He is looking at the organization itself. So the scope is bigger. Okay, so Taylor, the scope is smaller. It is very work focused. Fayol, it is bigger, looking at organization. Okay, so there are difference between Taylor and also Fayol. Okay, so Fayol is basically French. Okay, so his theory concerns scientific organization of labor. Okay, influential in the beginning 20th century. Okay, so his theory deal a lot with organization of production. Okay, and if you can recall, we did mention about what is management. So he was the first one to identify the 4 functions of management. At the point in time, he called it planning, organizing, directing, controlling. Okay, so that's why it's very important for us to get back where did we come across the function. So it started even during the Industrial Revolution 1.0. Okay, so his version was plan, organize, command, coordinate, control, more or less. Okay, and besides that, okay, so besides the main thing, so this is the main thing of his novelty. Besides that, he has identified also the 14 principles that he saw common to all organization. Okay, so this 14, basically, if you have notepad with you, so you might want to jot this down, because I did not describe it in further here. I'll describe it verbally. Okay, so the 14 principles that he see that organization should have to ensure the organization prosper is basically, first, specialization or division of labor. So he believed that every labor should be compartmentalized. So meaning to say that you do not have labor that knows about marketing, knows about packaging, knows about technical. You do not need that. So for him, a labor should be compartmentalized. So if a labor is in packaging, they will be doing packaging for quite a while. Okay, that will be the task. So why there? So that they will be expert in packaging. Okay, so there are specialized tasks for each labor. So similar to construction, for example, as a graduate engineer, if you sought to go after large organization after graduating, so for example, let's say such as Gamuda, for example, so you might be absorbed into one of the specialized field. Okay, so for example, you are absorbed into piling. Okay, so you are in that specialized specialized field, and you will only do piling for many years. Okay, but you might be specialized in that. So cuma once you get out of that organization, get out of that department, and you are seeking for a job for a higher salary into other organization, okay, and they require you to look into the architectural elements. They require you to look into the structural concreting, and you got no idea about it. So that will be one drawback. So actually, as a graduate engineer, after graduating, whether you choose to go to a large organization or a small organization, there are pros and cons to it. Okay, so if you are absorbed into a specialized department, if you're going to venture out later, so let's say after doing piling for maybe 2-3 years, you don't know other things. Okay, you have never managed a project from slab concreting to a column to beam and to roof truss and so on. Quite difficult to get a job later on. But on the other hand, if you are joining a smaller company that does everything, okay, so basically it might be a subcontractor who is constructing residential. So you would be able to understand how the foundation works. Okay, so if it's not piling, housing, maybe it's just a pad footing. So from there until the construction of the whole house. So you might be able to see how the progression of building would be. So there are actually pros and cons going into a large company after graduating and also a small company. Cuma small company, yes, you know everything, including contracting, tender documents, semua tu, but it's hard lah. Okay, so it is not an easy task. So you, of course, it will be quite overwhelming as a graduate engineer because you need to do so many things. So you need to juggle between contract document, at the same time you have to look how to say look on at your site, okay, of your site. So look out for the site and so on. So but well, that is where your wise decision comes into picture. So which one would you prefer? Same goes to doctor. Okay, so for example, doctors from houseman, you may select to tag along with under certain department. Okay, so ONG ke, skin ke, eye specialized because you intend to go into that in deep, or rather than going into that specialized department, you may just go into a normal MO, okay, medical officer, that at the front end. Okay, so you look into whatever comes on at the hospital, so rather than specialize. So but cuma once you specialize, you might lose the knowledge or knowing the overall how to say knowledge as a MO. So sama lah, similar, I think. A lot of field are as such. You can choose to be specialized, you can choose to be general. There are pro and cons to it. So but once you have decided that you want to be specialized, then you need to be ensured that you are really passionate about the field, so that you will move, how to say, once you're passionate with the field, you will grow and you will create success. If you choose a certain specialization, but and then you do not have the passion and you do not like it already after several years, then it'll be a waste of your time. So there are some things you can think of. Okay, but coming back here, at this point of time, for him is basically it is important to have decision of labor. Okay, so labors are segregated as such. Okay, and the second point is basically authority with responsibility. So what it means by authority with responsibility is where leaders should be given the authority to command. Okay, and but the leaders should help the authority with responsibility. So if you're a leader, you should treat people without bias. Okay, so you have the authority, you can give command, but you should carry it responsibly. Okay, so with responsibility. So it's like professional lah, basically, in simple manner. Okay, so being professional and ethical, holding the authority too, because sometimes human, when given power, we tend to be above the others. Okay, we tend to feel that we are above the others, and the decisions made, the allocation made are irresponsible. Itu yang susahnya sometimes. Okay, so when humans are given authority, humans are given power, sometimes it is being misused, the power. Okay, so what he mentioned here is, once given the authority, the leader should act responsibility alongside the authority given. Okay, and the third one is basically discipline. Okay, so for him, at this point of time, it is essential to have discipline at the workplace. So meaning to say that if there are any misconduct by the workers, they should be penalized. Okay, so I think even now lah job pun. Okay, so if there are any misconduct, there are ethical board to actually judge you and so on. Okay, so to penalize and so on, discipline. The next one is unity of command. Okay, so unity of command is basically there are certain leaders to be assigned, and those subordinates should listen to the leaders. Okay, so unity in command. Okay, so unity of command. So subordinates, there are allocated leaders they should listen to. Okay, unity of direction, meaning to say that everyone in an organization should how to say, should unite towards the direction of the organization. Okay, and every organization would have their vision, would have their mission, or every project would have their objective. So the workers or basically everyone in an organization should unite towards that direction. Okay, towards the vision, towards the mission. The next point is subordination of individual interests. Okay, so subordination of individual interests, meaning to say that as a worker, you need to place the organization interest first before the interest of yourself. Okay, so for example, the most obvious is something like a teacher. Okay, so nowadays a lot of teachers basically providing tuition, okay, after school hours. However, as a teacher, okay, and accountable to the organization, the government, they should place that more important. Okay, so they should deliver equally or better knowledge to the student during the school time in comparison to the after hours. Okay, so they shouldn't be doing their tuition job or whatsoever during the time they are teaching the at the school. Okay, so subordination of individual interest, basically you should place your individual interest at the, you know, at the side, and your organization interests at the forefront. Okay, next will be remuneration ataupun wages ataupun salary. Okay, so remuneration is where is similar to the ones prior to that we mentioned. Okay, so a job well done should be well paid. Okay, so if the worker has done the job as accordingly, then they should be provided remuneration. Okay, so tak adalah potong sini potong sana. So it should be well paid lah according to the job that they have done. Okay, the next point is centralization. So centralization is centralized decision making. Okay, so meaning to say that a lot of decision or most decision comes from the central headquarter. In the current circumstances, in the current situation sekarang ni, it's quite difficult if your decision is it needs to go back to the HQ all the time. So now with a globalized world, a lot of decisions are basically decentralized. But at that point of time, Industrial 1.0, it is not that of a globalized world. The decision comes from the HQ, centralized. Okay. The next point is basically chain line of command. Okay, at this point of time, he requires that we need to have this organizational structure. Okay, so the chain of command tu kena ada. So line of authority needs to be there, and it should be clearly distinguished. So who is the boss, second boss, third boss, and so on. So organization structure lah. So there should be an establishment of organization structure. Okay, and next, everything should be in order in a well systematic manner. Okay, so equity. Okay, so equal among all. Lifetime job for good workers. Okay, so at this point of time, they also talk about reducing the turnover by workers. Okay, so if there are good workers and that good workers needs to be sustained. Okay, so providing them lifetime job. And then workers are given the what do you call the freedom to initiate. Okay, the initiative done by workers. And spread the corps basically means harmony at the workplace. Okay, so these are the 14 principles that Henry Fayol thinks is required to actually have an organization which could be successful. So far, any question?
Not yet, Doctor.
Okay, so I suppose it's clear. Okay, so the next theories is basically Elton Mayer. So Elton Mayer came later after the scientific theory, after administrative theory, and Elton Mayer comes later because it involves human. Okay, so from the study done by Elton Mayer, they found that there are certain characteristics of human that actually could provide success to an organization, not only from scientific, not only from the way you work, not only from the way an organization is managed, but it comes also how you manage the people. So Elton Mayer starts the evolution of including human as one of the factors in ascertaining success of an organization. Okay, so hence he introduced the Houghton effect. Okay, so the Houghton effect basically is the improvement in productivity or quality resulting from the fact that workers knew they were being studied or being observed. Okay, so when workers are paid attention to, chances are they will respond positively. Okay, so the story is basically Houghton is a place or is a factory basically. So actually Elton Mayer and the team is a team of researchers. So what they intended to do is they have this hypothesis. If there are changes in lighting system, okay, so dim light, bright light, it could affect the productivity of the workers. So they went to this factory to check on their hypothesis. So to research on their hypothesis. So they did started off with dim light. They did started off with bright light, and they realized that scenario, either situation, the workers perform really well. Okay, so whether dim or whether it is bright, normally the hypothesis is where when it's dim, the workers would be a little bit sluggish. When it's bright, the workers would be more pumped up to actually conduct the work. So that was the hypothesis, but eventually the result came out to be almost the same. Okay, so or equivalent. So hence that's why they realized that okay, maybe it is because the workers knew that they were watching. So that's why they came up with this result. Okay, the improvement in productivity or quality could result from the fact that workers knew they were being watched, okay, or studied or observed. So that is the result they obtained from there. So actually they came with a different hypothesis. The result is a different hypothesis. Okay, so it's a different result. Okay, so hence meaning to say that whenever you're doing something in future, if the workers knew that they are being watched, they are being paid attention to, okay, here, the chances are they will respond positively. Okay, so hence they think that humans or people, once you treat them well or you observe them in such a way, they will actually produce positively. Okay, and people have different sources of job satisfaction. Interpersonal relations are required. Okay, so this is where they introduce interpersonal relation. Prior to that, they don't think interpersonal relation is important. Once they have conducted this experiment in Houghton, they find that when people are socializing, having communication between them, they are happier. Okay, so that is one of the result they found from here. Interpersonal relationship required. Prior to that, the two of the theories did not actually allow this trade union or whatsoever. Okay, and style of supervision affect level of productivity. So probably at the lower level, at the operational level, the style of supervision should be observing. So you can see that at factories you have this manager walking around, observing, ensuring workers are doing their job. But at the higher level where they are not doing operational work, they might not require such supervision. Yang you imagine you are an engineer and your boss is right at the back watching you doing your job all the time. So might not be necessary. So probably the style of supervision differs at the factory level, at the floor level, and also at the higher level. Okay, so four general conclusions drawn from the Houghton studies. Okay, so the aptitudes of individuals are imperfect predictors of job performance. Informal organization affect productivity, which is the social. Informal organization basically will be trade union. Okay, so social interaction between workers affect productivity. Work group norm affect productivity, and the workplace is a social system. So quite a lot of things we can gather from here, okay, especially that when we are talking about informal organization, okay. When you have such trade union, when you have such informal organization, it shows that at least they are secure, okay. So there is a society or association that could actually assist them if something goes wrong, and obviously it could provide in positive productivity, okay. And work group norm affect productivity. So obviously if you are joined into a work group who are who basically everyone is lazy, you will tend to follow the norm. And if you join into a work group who are hardworking, you tend to follow the trend. Okay, so that's why work group norms affect productivity. So the lazy group, if you join it, you will tend to follow the norm. Okay, so that's why it's very important when we are choosing um our what do you call our circle of friends, it reflects who we are. So usually when we see someone, or when you try to know someone, try to know the people surrounding, how do they are, so how are they. Usually birds of the same feather will flock together, is a saying kan dalam English. So birds of the same feather will flock together, maksudnya if you're same feather, same attitude, usually you can go along together. But if you have a group of friends, tapi you cannot get in, okay, you feel like you cannot get along with that group, meaning to say that you have a different attitude, okay, so you are not part of the team. So then I think you should just excuse yourself. So because there are certain attitude that we, you know, don't force yourself to follow the norm that if you are not that norm, okay. So there are how to say, so there are certain things that we might not agree upon on a certain norm of group. If you do not agree and you think it's not right of the norm of doing such, then just excuse yourself. So normally once you latch yourself to such norm and that norm is negative, you will be reflected as one of them, okay. So I think this is very important. So normally we can see an attitude of a person or the character of the person based on the friends and surrounding, whoever that surrounds that person, okay. And the workplace is a social system, is very important. Prior to this, the theories did not mention anything about social, and this is where it started that people social is important, okay. All right, so the next is Douglas McGregor. So this is a very simple theory, okay. So this social psychologist proposed his famous XY theory. So the theory is very straightforward. So he has distinguished that people, okay, so workers can be divided into theory X people and also theory Y people. Okay, so theory X people are people who dislike working, okay. And when they dislike working, most people must be controlled, must be threatened before they will work hard enough. Okay, since they dislike, you kena paksa dia orang lah. Okay, so the average human prefers to be directed, dislike responsibility. So meaning to say that this kind of person will not do more than is required. A means A. So and only small percentage are born leaders in these circumstances. Others are followers. So this would more likely represent floor level. Okay, so workers who are basically doing floor level jobs. Okay, so but if a worker of the floor level are having attitude not as such, usually they will move forward and become higher in their position. Okay, so if they have something like this theory Y kind of attitude, okay, so whereby working is as natural as playing and resting, so meaning to say that a person enjoys working. So working is not a chore. It is not that you drag your feet to work, but you go to work and you enjoy the job, okay. And control and punishment are not the only way to make people work. So meaning to say that for theory Y kind of people, that is not the way to make them work. So there are other motivation, not punishing, because they are willingly working. Okay, so if you punish someone who willingly work, I think it's a very big mistake that a leader is doing lah. Okay. So once the job is satisfying, the result will be commitment to the organization. Okay, and people usually accept and often seek responsibility here for theory Y, and theory Y people are self-directed. So you can see that if the norm is this theory X, okay, but you discover someone with this kind of attitude, they can think on their own and they can know what to do the next, then they are theory Y. So they might be at a higher level. Okay, so they might be able to actually direct all this because they know what to do. Okay, so self-directed. So theory X and theory Y. Okay, so comments on the theory. Okay, so both theories are quite separate. Okay, so theory Y is difficult to put into practice on shop floor, large mass production, but it can be used initially in managing the managers and professional. Okay, so managers should accept theory Y. Okay, so on. Okay, next will be theory Z. So theory Z is basically sort of like Japanese management style. Okay, so advocates a combination of all the best about theory Y just now and modern Japanese management. Okay, so when we mention about modern Japanese management, the word freedom comes into picture. Okay, so a large amount of freedom and trust with workers, and assume that workers have a strong loyalty and interest in teamwork and organization. Okay, so when we associate with Japanese, they are very loyal people. Okay, like kamikaze. If they lose, then is that the word? I think so. So if they lose, basically the sense of loyalty and the sense of disappointment is on their own. Okay, so it's a combination of theory Y and also Japanese, whereby they place a lot of freedom and trust on their worker. For example, in the Toyota production, Toyota factory. Okay, so 1950s more or less. So they started off after World War II, 1940, so World War II. And after that, they are trying to grow their automation industry. Okay, so Toyota. So what they did is they went to the Western factory to learn how Ford was doing the job. Okay, when Ford was doing the job, mass production, they find that a lot of waste in Western factory. So in Japanese, at that point of time, after World War II, they do not have the funding. They do not have the large factory. They do not have that much of money. Okay, so what they do is they try to come up with processes. Okay, process A, process B, process C, the factory system, minimal waste. Okay, so minimal waste, and they only produce when being what do you call, being ordered. Okay, so order come, baru they fix it. Order come, baru they fix it. Okay, and that is what we call Toyota production system. Okay, TPS, Toyota production system. And that theory or Toyota production system is actually a theory. Basically, it's a management concept that was how to say, that was westernized, okay, later on around 1990s into something called lean theory or lean concept. Okay, but it started off with Toyota production system. Okay, what I'm trying to say is basically in the Toyota production system, you have belt. Okay, so the installation of each parts of the car will be through a belt. But however, let's say one section identified an error. Okay, so let's say the steering error or whatsoever, that one sole worker can stop the whole production. Okay, because it's like a belt. Once he realized there is defect in one of the element, so he can pull in the belt. Okay, so there would be the belt that stops the entire production. So the entire production will go into the steering. section and try to fix the defect. So that is that much of a freedom allowed for a worker, just one worker. So the freedom, and the freedom well, how to say, executed, will turn into the trust given. Okay, so they would know the trust. So if they pull in the bell and the whole production stops, so they understand the trust bestowed on them by the organization. Okay, so they allow the freedom, they allow the trust. Okay, and when given that, it will return with loyalty. Okay, so the workers will find that they are being, given that much of trust, so it will instill the sense of loyalty. Okay, so theory Z places more reliance on the attitude, the responsibility of the workers. Okay, so McGregor's theory X and Y mainly focus on management and motivation from the managers and organizations perspective. Okay, and these are basically just in simplified manner the difference between X, Y, and also Z. Okay, so in similar manner, these are the difference. Okay, so Elton Mayer, basically the Horton effect, he produced the social system. Okay, so theory Z is about workers require direction. Theory Y is about workers self-directed. Theory Z is about the blend of theory, please change this in your notes, yeah. Theory Y and also theory Z. Okay, so the blend of theory Y and also theory Z. Self-discipline requires high degree of support and also trust by the employer. Okay, and the next is basically Maslow's. Let me see how many slides left. Okay, almost the end. All right, so Maslow's hierarchy is another concept. Okay, established around 1940s, 1950s. And if you look into recent research studies, we are still looking into this. Okay, Maslow's hierarchy theory. What motivates us as human? Okay, what motivates us at our workplace? So it starts with fulfilling biological, physiological needs as human. Okay, basically, if we can have air, food, drink, and shelter for us. Okay, so as a fresh graduate, you would need the salary. So once you have the salary, usually we move on to a job that provides us security. Okay, so probably you will go into a job which are permanent in nature rather than contract basis. Okay, so and you would go for a job which are more secure. Maybe you might not want to work at the construction site. You might want to work in the office, which are more secure. So the second level is to feel secure with the job. Once you feel secure with the job, then you move on to having belonging at your workplace. Okay, so you will find that relationship with your working colleague is important. You have an office system that supports you. So those are the things you might want to find, the sense of belonging. If you have fulfilled the salary, if you have fulfilled the security, but every day you go to the job and you feel that everyone hates you, probably you might want to jump job as well. Okay, so there is only that much that we can stand going to a job, and you don't feel that sense of belonging. Okay, but however, once you have the sense of belonging, you have that good mutual relationship with your working colleague, then you might require, or you might want something a little bit higher. Okay, which is esteem. You might want to feel a sense of achievement. Okay, so you might want the status, maybe a promotion. Okay, so from junior engineer, you might want to perform, and you're given the responsibility as a project manager, for example. Okay, so you want that kind of reputation, you want that kind of responsibility given to you, because how long do you want to be the junior engineer? So at one point you will feel that daripada getting instruction, you want to have that authority in planning your own project. Okay, so assign certain responsibility. So you might want to have an organization that allows you to do so. Okay, and once you have that and you're given that and you have gained that status reputation, then you go into self-actualization. Okay, personal growth and fulfillment. Self-actualization is in a form where you have reached the peak, and it is how to say, is beyond you, and is more on you helping the others. Okay, so the personal growth in this sense is basically that you have achieved that status where you are actually doing you are actually helping others to gain to that level, something like what Bill Gates are doing, something like that. So to one point you have achieved so much. Okay, so you are the richest person, you have all organizations, everything, for example Jack Ma as well. Okay, and you give up the stakehold. And Bill Gates, for example, you have reached that level with that much of what do you call achievement. Okay, but however, all the and I don't think he will inherit that monetary to the children, if I'm not mistaken. I've read somewhere, and the inheritance will be given to the needy organization, NGOs, and so on. Okay, to one point you will reach that you think that you have done enough, and you want to help the others to achieve such status, for example. So it will be more on giving back to the others. Okay. All right, so each of us is motivated by our needs. Okay, basic needs are inborn. Okay, evolve over 10 over years, and basically this hierarchy of needs states that we must satisfy each need in turn, starting from the lowest level to the highest level. Okay, only when the lower level are satisfied, then we can move on to the higher level. Okay, so if the things that satisfy our lower level are swept away, we are no longer concerned about maintenance. Okay, so for us, this is how our the motivation for us to move on actually being achieved. Okay, and generally to encapsulate or to close the chapter. Okay, so there are certain key concepts that you need to know. Organization, okay, people working together. Goal, a desired future condition that organization seeks to achieve. Management, a process using resource, and so on. So importantly, planning, organizing, leading, controlling, and also staffing. Okay, so and we have come to the end of chapter 1. Okay, any question can I get from the class? Tak ada.
So far not yet.
So far not yet. Okay, let me pick a name so that we can get someone to ask me something. Kalau tak, there will be forever no question. Okay, let me see. We have 51 in the room. So everyone think of a question now. I will try to choose one name and then we'll see what question comes from you. So cepat fikir. I'll give you like 2 minutes to think of a question. 2 minutes. Okay, all right. Let's see the lucky one for today. Okay, Miss Nur Adlina Amran. Nur Adlina Amran. Are you there?
Yes, are you?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Can you please give us one question? You might be representing the class today.
Okay. I want to ask about your opinion about we're going to intern during semester break.
Okay.
So what do you think if we took project management as our job to, I mean specification, I mean can intern
You mean on construction site ke?
can intern manage to cope with this work?
Okay, I think
Yes.
as an intern, if because normally is you will not be given the whole project to manage. You will be either office based or site based. Okay, so office based you'll be doing a lot of design work, or if you are in contract department, you'll be looking at the contract. But at the job site, I think you'll be managing the project lah. So you will be looking at works done at site and so on. So I would think that as an intern, it will be good to have that site-based experience. So of course, masuk terus to manage a project is impossible because it comes with a lot of different experience and so on. But what you can do as an intern, especially at site-based, what you learn, I think the first thing you would learn is to basically to read the drawing. So commonly we design in 2D, okay? But however, at the site, you will reflect that in 3D. So it will be physically built. I think a site job will give you a good opportunity for you to reflect your design and how it is constructed on the site. So if you ask me personally, one day of experience on site, you can learn a lot because you can see a lot of things that you have learned theoretically tapi in practice macam mana. That is how it is. Okay. Ke sebelum ni you have design reinforcement bar. So 10T whatsoever. Tapi in real, how does it look like? So you will get the opportunity. So I think it's a good idea, but I don't think you'll be placed as a project manager terus lah. Cuma at the site base, you would do the job as more or less as such. So you need to monitor workers to, you would follow tagging along the engineer to see workers to buat kerja ke tak, how directions are being given from engineer to your site supervisor. So part and parcel of management sebenarnya tu, site based tu. Okay, Nur Adlina, did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, so
Thank you.
Alright, thank you. Can I have maybe one more lah, kita ambil satu lagi. Kita ambil one boy pula. Safi Jamaluddin ada? Encik Safi Jamaluddin?
Ya saya.
Okay, Mr. Safi, just give us one question.
Kan kita belajar semua teori tu kan, maksudnya nanti kita akan keluar dalam final.
Teori tu keluar dalam final?
Maksudnya kita kena faham, lepas tu hafal untuk dalam final.
Okay, for ODL, we don't have final. Kita ada test 1 dengan test 2. And I will foresee teori tu akan dikeluarkan dalam test 1. Cuma, I do not want you guys to memorize. This subject I have mentioned earlier, I don't want you to just memorize. Henry Fayol tu dia buat apa? Hafal. Because once you hafal, after exam, you will forget about it. Trust me, I've gone through the same experience. Okay. For me personally, you try to understand, you try to visualize, okay, Henry Fayol ni macam ni, and what he intend to do in an organization. Don't memorize. There are difference between memorizing and understanding. Memorizing, you put in place it in your brain, okay, Fayol, this one, and then you hafal the 14 things with all the S, A, whatever, okay. Understanding is where you visualize the person, you visualize what he wants for the organization and what he thinks important. So two different things. So I think when you are taking this course, try to understand, try to see what they are trying to say, try to imagine you are in an organization and does apa yang dicakap to make sense tak in an organization? How does it reflect applicable in an organization? Okay, so don't memorize, okay, memorize, and then once you memorize and then in your test you sangkut, okay, so stress whatsoever, you black out, itu jadi blackout, then you forget everything. But if you understand, even though your answer does not specifically mention that term, but your elaboration talks about that term, then your marks are there. Okay, so it is not about the words that you memorize. It is about understanding, because in your test nanti you will be elaborating. Dia bukan point by point, one word macam tu for you to memorize. Okay, so please understand. Alright, Sophie, did I answer your question?
Yes, Doctor.
Okay,
Thank you.
so I think each classes, if we have the time, we will take in 2-3 question macam ni lah. If no, you will not be asking me question. Okay, so far I think, any other question from here? Tak ada. Okay, so in that case, probably tomorrow. Okay, so in that case, I think tomorrow will be the recording class. So we'll do the same. Okay, so I will have the class with C3 and C6 at 2, and I will pass you the recording prior to that. Okay, is it okay for you?
Okay.
Okay,
Yes,
I
Doctor.
Okay.
promise and make sure that you memang go through the recording. Okay.
Okay, Doctor.
Alright, okay. Alright, so we end the class today here, and thank you everyone for your attention. I'll see you in the next class.
Alright, thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.